Hello, my name is Janelle Knox-Hayes, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Urban Studies and Planning. I'm a member of the Environmental Policy and Planning Group, and I'm also a member of the International Development Group. And my research spans areas of environmental policy, particularly focusing on climate change and climate adaptation with the new work that I'm doing in the Arctic. So climate mitigation is focusing on things that countries and economies can do to try to reduce greenhouse gas emissions so that they can prevent some of the worst outcomes of climate change. And adaptation, in contrast, is really focusing on finding solutions to the changing climate. So sea level rise, melting glaciers, weather abnormalities, or adverse weather events, how to deal with those. And so the prior work that I've done focused on climate mitigation and looking at how different nation states and different regions are trying to come to terms with climate change as a problem and the solutions they're trying to generate. And so I can talk about that, I guess, with my book, The Cultures of Markets, the Political Economy of Climate Governance. And then the new project that I'm doing is looking at the Arctic and trying to understand how social values influence policy making, and that's really in response to climate adaptation. So as sea ice melts over the next 30 years, there's new access to resources in the Arctic, and member states as well as other interested parties are trying to come to terms with what does that mean and how will these resources be used and divided. So the question is about the cultures of markets and why that's important to understanding the mitigation of climate change. And so one of the things that the book explores is this relationship between what I call technocratic governance and then the actual socio-political context in which the governance is established and operates. And so the way in which that manifests is through an exploration of carbon markets. And carbon markets, I guess, are emblematic of what I call a technocratic or techno-rational approach to climate change. And so it's this idea that you have a universal problem. There are too many greenhouse gases being emitted into the atmosphere. And so the way in which there is an actual rational technical solution that can be universally applied across member states or across regions. And that solution is basically to try to capture and quantify how many excess greenhouse gases are being emitted, and then to take those, divide them up, parcel them up into units, split them amongst compliant states or those that have an obligation to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and then create a sort of combined political economic response. And in many cases, this is either a tax or, what I explore in the book, a carbon emissions market to then create value for the absence of the emissions instruments. And so the idea is that these markets can be a sort of universal solution that could be applied across contexts. There's a sort of objective reality in the economic solution of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And what I explore in the book is the way in which that universal logic or technocratic logic confronts the actual application of markets on the ground, which is in fact a very messy socio-political process that involves a variety of different institutions. It also confronts the ways in which different cultures frame the problem of climate change and then how they think about the solution to climate change. And then there's also the issue of the social values. What are the aspirations with which different cultures and societies are responding to climate change, and how do those values and aspirations shape their responses?